Hello and welcome to Paradigm Playbook, a podcast for entrepreneurs in the business of sports. Your hosts, Dave Kozak and Steve Cook, are business owners, successful entrepreneurs, sports enthusiasts, avid readers, and longtime friends. For years, they've read every business book on the market and built successful companies with what they've learned. This podcast will give you the critical takeaways in just 15 minutes a week. It's a quick and easy playbook for building a winning sports business. And now, here are your hosts, Dave and Steve.
We appreciate your feedback. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a review. If not, we'd still love to hear from you so we can improve.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Paradigm Playbook. I'm your host, Dave Kozak, alongside my co-host, I guess not alongside, opposite today, Mr. Steve Cook.
Morning, David. A little remote recording today, though. Thank you for being there. This is exciting. Are we flying without Mr. Niall Cummins today?
Yeah, we're going no producer today, so we'll see how it goes. Things might get a little hairy here, you know?
Okay, if we don't make it, he's going to think awfully highly of himself.
Right? So, Steve, I've been doing a lot of training recently in my own company, and I thought it was a good subject to talk about, which is sort of the hustle of business, right? And, you know, I think it parlays perfectly into the sports world, but it's not just sports businesses. It's every business. And, you know, we're constantly exchanging books back and forth on business and what to do and how to do it. And all those books come with a concept, right? Whether it's the unreasonable hospitality or relentless solution focus or mindset, right? There's or the
right.
Marketing plan or it's all these things. And you can be very well read and very intelligent and very underproductive, right? And so what we've been really focusing in on in our companies is the idea of the hustle. And, I don't want people to mistake the hustle as in like a hustle as
it's not a scam.
Yeah, not a scam. The hustle of it as in like discipline, hard work, and the follow through and the stick to itness and the resilience. And that's the hustle that I'm talking about. And, the trying to be a step ahead or the, go the extra mile or do the thing that no one else is doing. And, you talk about blue ocean strategy and this is just incorporating all that stuff. But I think it's the application of knowledge is what it comes down to, and the application of work ethic. It's not hey, yeah, I've got a great work ethic, but you can have a great work ethic and do the wrong thing.
So I was trying to come up with a kind of a mathematical formula of what hustle was and what the key ingredients, and taking all those books that you mentioned and picking out. So here's what I came up with, and we'll see if this makes sense. But I said creativity plus effort plus grit plus discipline equals hustle. So the creative is what you're going to do. The effort is how hard you do it. The grit is how long you do it. And the discipline is how regular you are, consistent in doing it.
Yeah, whether you want to or not.
Putting that all together. I guess it's missing the intelligence component of it being the right thing to begin with.
Yeah.
So I think that's important, because all the hustle in the world doesn't get you anything if you're talking to the wrong people, saying the wrong thing, or setting the wrong example.
Yeah. And when you think about the statistics out there on success of small businesses and how long they take to fail, or how many succeed past that 5-year mark, right? Mm-hmm. Is it a matter of doing the wrong thing or not having the hustle, right? And I think in some cases, if you open a an ice shop in Alaska, but probably a bad application of the product. But in a lot of instances, it's too distracted, it's too unfocused, and people are, they're spending a lot of time in the periphery as opposed to what makes the business successful in its own right. And I had a little hint of this in my own thing. Is I've got all this stuff going on, and I'm starting to go, well, what's the main discipline that has to be there day in and day out that gives me the freedom to do these other projects and to do these other things, right? And it's always easy and fun to look at the next best thing, or to start thinking about the next exciting adventure, or what else could we do? What else could we do? And I think a lot of times people, they going back to VHS tapes, they put themselves in fast forward, and they're constantly on to the next, as opposed to the diligent, resilient sort of hustle side of it. And Matt McCarter said to me a while back, he basically said, in our business, if you're around long enough, you're successful. Because, and I think that's true in most businesses, right? Like if you weather the test of time, right, there's a success in that. And then there's a kind of repetition of that. But I think the people that fail are the ones that, like, they come in with this idea of what they're going to do. They're grounded. They've thought through their business plan. They've thought through their offering. But then they skip around, and they get to the next thing, and they get to the next thing, and they're starting to incorporate more before they have the groundwork to do what they do very well and what they make money on.
I think if you go back to the entrepreneurial roller coaster and think about, the ups and downs of your small business, I think it runs on probably a variable hustle factor, that if you scale your hustle from 1 to 10, and 10 being, all out, full speed into it, I think a lot start at that point, and then you come off of that and you lose some of that hustle, and it's natural to get discouraged by things. So I think there's 4 things that you can lose sight of that will cause you to lose that hustle factor. So one is your why you're in the business to begin with. And you start going through the motions without, relating it to the why. I think you lose that. You come off of your goal, or you pass your goal. And so you dip down and hustle. If you go into, we're going to make $1 million, and you get to 1.2 million and you slow down 1.3 million, and it's like, I've got a good friend that is exactly that. He's lost his hustle because he reached his goals. The third one is, and I'm reading a book now, a Patrick Bet-David book that's called Choose Your Enemies Wisely. And, that you pass your enemy, and that enemy is no longer relevant, and you haven't focused on a new enemy. There's not a new target in your head who you're gonna pass. So you need to choose a new enemy. And the fourth one is the one that you already mentioned. It stops being fun. Yeah. And you have to get back. So I think why, goal, enemy, fun. If you keep all those, it will keep you hungry, and the hunger is what's going to drive the hustle.
Yeah, and I think there's this other thing, that the glorification of small business, right? Or entrepreneurialism or entrepreneurship, whereas, like, you're going to get into business for yourself, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be so awesome. And then you go through that first downturn on the roller coaster, and you're like, wow, this really isn't that awesome. This isn't that fun. And, maybe you climb out, maybe you don't, but I think there's a grounding necessary at the same time, right? If it were easy, everybody would do it, right? It's not easy to be in business for yourself. It is a challenge. And it is not always fun. It has its perks. There's no question about it. It has its benefits. It has its really bad days too. And so I think where, you look at that, 2-year, 5-year, 10-year, I think the statistic I just pulled up was 20% of new businesses fail during the first 2 years, 45% during the first 5 years, and 65% during the first 10 years. And only 25% of small new businesses make it 15 years or more, right? Well, I'll use my first business as an example, which we still do to this day, is property and casualty insurance. That's a repetitive hustle, right? It just is day in and day out. You're doing the same thing. And I think, you're doing gymnastics classes or lessons, or you're selling widgets. I don't care what the hustle is. There is going to be a repetitive nature to it that you have to mentally prepare yourself for, because if you don't, and you lose that sizzle and you lose that desire, it takes an awful lot of effort to get to the top, but it's very easy to fall once you get up there, right?
So it's interesting that it's hard to have a conversation on hustle without going back and talking about my favorite baseball player of all time, which was Pete Rose.
Charlie Hustle.
And regardless of what anybody thinks about him today or mistakes he's made, he was known as Charlie Hustle. And I think the first time I saw him watch ball 4 across and him drop his bat and sprint to first, I'm like, wow. And I remember the announcer then saying, what he lacks in talent, he makes up in hustle. And I think in the beginning of a business, you lack the security of knowing you're going to make it. So you generally hustle more because you feel you have to. Yeah. And then the more secure you get, the less you hustle. And sometimes, and what I'm finding with clients now, and we're called to come in and work with small businesses that have hit a plateau, and they say, what's going on? Well, the fun of that hustle, because they reach that plateau, is not there. And how many times have you said to me, if you're not going up, you're going down? The plateaus aren't real. So I think that's the problem, where you have to do what it takes to reignite the hustle. And maybe in property casualty, maybe the person that was hustling that to get their first X number of sales doesn't have that, and you need a new person in that role. And that person has to have a bigger, brighter star to chase. I don't know. I think there's something that ignites the hustle.
Well, and I use the analogy of mountains a lot, right? You get to the peak of the mountain you're climbing, and it's the same concept you're talking about as setting the new target. And just when you get to the peak of that one, you look to your right, and there's another one that goes even higher. And every time you get to the top, there's another one to climb. There's another thing to do. And this isn't all about like taking over businesses or dominance. It's about your core competencies have to be followed every day, right? And so if you have a business that has a core competency doing gymnastics classes or giving swim lessons or selling property and casualty insurance or selling life insurance or selling widgets or repairing something, that core competency has to be resolute before you move on to add another core competency to the business. And I think a lot of times what people do is they chase the next bright light and forget about the core competency that got them to where they were. And so, just as a perfect example in my business is I do the same thing today in our business. We use a little bit of technology. We use a little bit of improved processes, but we do the same exact thing we did in 2008 when I started. And then every business that I've bolted on or purchased or acquired or sold, we've done the same thing. When we got it, we got it to a point where it was performing, it was doing what it was supposed to do, and we continued to do the same things day in and day out. And until we can replace a process that is an absolute improvement, we won't do it, right? So I'll use marketing as an example, right? If you have a marketing mechanism that works and drives business to your door, never leave that marketing model until you have a model that can outperform that model. And so to do that, you have to split test, you have to beta test, right? You have to do all that stuff to get there. But I think a lot of people, the company that opens and buys spots in the value pack or the penny pincher magazine or the Clipper magazine, and that grows their business nicely, and then says, oh, well, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to go to a new magazine or a new periodical. It's a better clientele. We're hitting a different net worth segment. And all of a sudden the new business declines, and you're going, well, why would you ever walk away from that, what you were doing, to do this new thing that has been unproven, right?
Help us grow by sharing and tagging the Paradigm Playbook podcast on social media. We value your support.
Yeah, I think the same thing is true in sports business or in any business, really. I always think back about the circus performers that would put a plate on top of a stick and get it spinning, and you can picture those guys, and it's pretty amazing. They get it going, and then they start a second one, and then they move over and they start a third one, but just as it gets going, they got to go back and respin number one.
Yeah.
So when you're an entrepreneur, that's what you're doing. And now yours is, several businesses, but it's also true about one business that has several programs. You've got, a preschool program, you've got a junior high program, you got a high school, you have an adult program, you have co-ed program, and each one of those is a spinning plate.
Yeah.
And so in reality, the hustle factor has to go up as you grow that, or as you said, you've got to backfill with processes and people. And if it's people, it's good to bring young people in that still get a charge out of spinning that first plate. You're going to keep this plate spinning while I go start a new. And those people, and now, especially with AI and everything else, there's some of that plate spinning that can be done, electronically or computer wise or whatever. But either way, the hustle still has to be there, or the discipline.
We very similar concept we call it balls in the air, right?
Yeah.
The juggler's got to keep all the balls in the air. And so part of our whole thing is we may have a ball it's a low bounce, it's an easy one, and we've got 7 that we're constantly keeping up. Until this ball that is low is ready to throw into the mix, like we don't throw it into the mix, right? But we're constantly using and testing and doing the R&D on that stuff. So it's same as the plate spinning. But there's another piece of hustle that I want to parlay it to, because, we're talking about businesses, and a lot of entrepreneurial businesses start with a single individual, right? And so the single individual is the hustle from the start, and then the corporation is the hustle and the culture and all that stuff. There's a part of hustle in each individual person tied into the company that is built into the culture of the organization. And, if you go back and listen to the last, 60, 70 podcasts we've done, at some point or another, I always bring culture into it, because culture is a huge player in mentality, mindset, and the hustle game. And so as a business owner that has people working for them, right, you have to instill that hustle in others, because as small business, we can't afford the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule. We can't afford 80 or 20% of the people to do 80% of the work like that. You just can't have that. And so you've got to teach that extra mile, right? They say there's no shortcuts on the extra mile, right? It's, I think, a great expression. And in small business, if you're not doing that extra piece, if you're not thinking a step ahead, and in sales, we call it listening to the cues, listening to what people are telling you, finding the ways that they want you to communicate with them, whatever it may be. There's a component of hustle that is just do more. Like just do, like if you think you've done the job, just go up one more rung, or just do one extra step. And that in its own right is individual hustle, right? There's, my wife and I around the house are constantly saying, hey, any job worth doing, right, is worth doing right. And so if you're gonna do something, do it the right way. Well, in my opinion, the right way is doing more than you were asked to do. Even if it's a little bit more, sometimes it's a lot more. But, here's the example. My sales team, we had a conversation last week, had a nice client that wanted us to work on a portfolio for them. And something came back from underwriting and they had a question. And I'm sitting in the meeting when they're telling me this. And so because one carrier had a question about this client, my guys decided that a different carrier would be a better fit. Well, I disagree. The carrier that asked the question was the one that this client should be with. And I said, so when you got that information from the carrier, what'd you do? Like, wow, we just ran the quote somewhere else and built it differently. And I thought to myself, well, why? Right? I'm not saying that that's not a pathway you may take, but first question to me is, did you call the client and ask them? Did you ask them the question the underwriter wanted to know? Did you take that extra step? Hey, I'm concerned about this. This showed up. I need to understand it. Do you recall this? But the easy way out was to just go a different direction. And so the easy way out is rarely the best way to do it. The easiest conclusion is rarely the one that's the most successful. So I think it's make that extra call, write that extra email, take that extra 10 minutes to do what is unexpected, right? Do the unexpected. And that to me is also the individual hustle, right? If you've told someone you're going to do, and I love this, I'm going to teach this concept, but you look like you're chomping at the bit on me, Steve. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, I think what happens is, and what we've been teaching since day one of Paradigm Playbook is to develop a passion for the business you're in so you can hustle as much to build the business as you do to become an athlete or coach an athlete in the sports world. And, as you grow the business, you're going to be drawn away from it unless you craft the business around you being the technician, like they say in the E-Myth, and if you build the business around it, you can do that, but you can't pull away from it and expect to have the same hustle on the business building aspect of it. The other factor comes as entrepreneurs, sometimes it's hard to turn down business. And, we get this all the time where, we're helping people with their marketing, their sales program, their alignment, their facility design. And then someone comes and says, we need a program, a training program for our top athletes. And because I was in that way, it would be very easy for me to say, well, here, let me start. But that's getting out of my realm. And that's one plate that I can't spin. So I think you have to, they used to say, I don't think they stick to your knitting, but stick to what you do best and what you're capable at. And you'll have a passion for. And I think the passion, that feeling drives the hustle. And as long as you still have that, why you're in it, you can hustle with all you do.
Well, and there's another thing that, when I think of hustle is an easy way to give the perception of hustle, right? And I don't want people to think like you can just give the perception of hustle, right? But if the extra mile, there's no shortcuts, and you're trying to impress and you're trying to do things the right way, right? This is something I worked on customer service big time in our company about, was everybody's pants were on fire all the time, right? The phone rang and it was an issue that needed to be addressed at that moment. And I said, is it really? Is it a life or death situation? No. Okay. So, and if it is, then yeah, deal with it, right? But if it's not a life or death situation, let's figure out how to make the client feel special in whatever the engagement is. And so I started teaching him inside my company that whatever time you think it's going to take you to deliver the result that's necessary, whether it's make a phone call, whether it's send an email, whether it's fix a policy, whether it's go through underwriting, whether it's move money, whatever it is, set double the time expectation for the client and then achieve 50% of that. Meaning if it's going to take you an hour and you know you can get it done in an hour, tell them within 2 hours. And then when you get it done in an hour, say, hey, I started to think about this and it started to concern me, and I wanted to get it done as quickly as possible. I dropped everything else and handled this for you, right? That perception in its own right is the hustle, right? You're telling someone, hey, this is this. If I can do it this morning, I'm going to tell them by the end of the day. And then when I get it to them before noon, I let them know, hey, I did something extra for you. And that perception is real. And that is part of the hustle, right? That's part of the satisfaction.
And when you're in any business where you're selling something, hustle on behalf of the customer is appreciated. There was an old movie, I think it was called How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. I think that was the name of it. And it was a guy who, office opened up at 8. He came in at 7:30, rumpled up his shirt and put his face down on his desk like he had been working all night. So you're putting on all the signs of hustle, but not really doing it. And I think that becomes transparent real early in business. If you really don't care about the customer, but and hustle doesn't mean you're the first one with an answer. It means that when you do show up with the answer, it's an answer that you believe in and you're willing to share. So you have the customer's interest, at top of mind. So I tell everybody that comes in here, for baseball lessons, we do this all the time. People, after 3 weeks saying, I don't really see the improvement. And, we say, well, your son's 6, and so what I'm working to make them a better baseball player by the time they go to the big field. So I've got, in essence, 7 more years to work on this. And that's how I look at it. I want to come up with the right answer, not the fastest answer. And I think the dual meaning of hustle, and, what was the old movie about the pool player, the hustler? And that was different. That was how they're going to kind of swindle you.
Con you out of money.
Yeah. Hustle. They're going to swindle you out of your money or swindle you out. And that's not what we're talking about.
Not what we're talking
we're
about.
talking about the Pete Rose, work harder than anybody else and out achieve your abilities.
Yeah, there's 2 things that come to mind in what you just said. One is we have on our partners meeting, we have a statement that we identify as busy being busy. People are busy being busy, right? That's not hustle. You feel busy, you feel overwhelmed, you're busy being busy. It's not because you're not doing the right thing the right way at the right time, right? So, and then the hardest lesson that I had to learn as an entrepreneur is the art of saying no. Mm-hmm. Right? No, I'm not going to do that. No, we do not have the bandwidth. No, now's not the right time. No, we can't. Get good at saying no as an entrepreneur, because it'll keep the noise and the fuzz away from your core competencies and what you should be doing and all of that. That doesn't mean you say no to everything, but you have to get skilled at saying no and knowing when it's a distraction and not a benefit to you or your organization. And then the busy being busy, you can identify that person every single time. Like, busy being busy. What are you busy? What are you busy with? Oh, well, I got 17 emails and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that happened in my corporate life all the time. It's like, can't talk to you till Friday. I've got meetings all day, every day. Well, just because you have meetings doesn't mean you're accomplishing anything. So I think that anything that becomes a drudgery diminishes the effort, which reduces the hustle factor.
Yeah.
So you can't let it become drudgery, and if you're running a business, the part that's drudgery, it's like I can honestly say, I don't mind sweeping the floors at Grand Slam. It gives me a good feeling to know that it's clean. So that's not drudgery. But when it becomes drudgery, then you've got to get the right person to do that. And you move something to something that's more highly motivating, that gives you that excitement factor so you can hustle out again. More marketing, more, I like creating new programs, so that's exciting to me. So I hustle at it, I think.
Yeah. And I think there's another piece of that is important, Steve, is you will always tend to lean into and do the things that create excitement, but they are not the things that create success. They may be things that create future success, but I know for a fact that people in my organization will lean towards the thing that they do well and they know they're good at. They'll lean to do that first. And then all of a sudden they run out of time to do the things that, I really need to get this done, but I didn't get it done. And then, they push that down. So be disciplined in the time approach as well, right? Because we'll all, when you have a passion project, whether it's a little passion project or a big passion project, you will let nothing stand in the way to do it. And if you get tricked into that, it can certainly drain the batteries and drain the resources.
There's a lot of tests to make sure you're staying on track. My favorite is if I don't know what time it is, that means I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm not paying attention to, wow, it's already, boom. So that's different. And I think, whatever causes the clock to slow down is probably something you're not passionate about.
Well, and there's a quote, and I'm probably going to botch it, but it's something along the lines of, the success you're looking for is in the thing you're not doing.
Yeah. You're not.
Or the thing that you're putting off.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hiding there.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I do think that there's something to be said to keep structuring the business so it's fun to hustle. And if it's fun to hustle, then you'll keep doing it and you can go a long time. So many of the clients we get that talk about this plateau is because it's not fun and they've got themselves doing more accounting than they do leadership, or more, maintenance than they do creativity. So keep fueling the hustle.
Agreed. Keep fueling the hustle. Love it. All right. That's our time for today. Thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll leave it to Steve to sign us off.
Okay. Everyone, make it a great day.
If you have any business-related questions, feel free to send them over to us at playbook@paradigmplaybook.com. We're here to help.